I'm not the prof. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my own honor to introduce Professor Ndubuisi Ekekwe. Professor Ekekwe is the founder and chairman of Famiscorn Group. Dr. Ekekwe holds 2 doctoral and 4 master's degrees, including a PhD in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Johns Hopkins, USA, and MBA from the University of Calabar, Nigeria. He obtained his BEng from the Federal University of Technology, Owerri, indeed one of our own, where he graduated as his class best student. A U.S. semiconductor industry veteran, his working experiences include Diamond Bank, Analog Device Corporation, and NNPC. In Analog Devices, he worked in the team that designed a Generation XL for the iPhone and is credited for the company's first water-level clip scale package for internal sensors. He blogs at Harvard Business Review and previously served in the United States National Science Foundation Engineering Research Center, ED Committee for 4 years. Professor Ekekwe is a co-chairman of JPF Financial Group, a California-based financial advisory firm. An inventor, author, he held professorships in electrical and computer engineering, Babcock University, and the Mellon University Electrical and Computer Engineering. He is the recipient of IGA Global 2010 Book of the Year Award. He is also a TED Fellow, IBM Global Entrepreneur, and the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leader. Dr. Ekekwe is a selection board member of the 100 million Tony Elumelu Entrepreneurship Program. Please join me to welcome Dr.
Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. That was a very, very long introduction. Thank you, man. It's always very, very exciting to be here. I love coming to Lagos. This is a very beautiful city, the center of excellence. I want to thank all the people that invited me. It's quite a wonderful privilege for me to have this opportunity of speaking before you in this capacity. Thank you very much for the promise of our nation. I love this country. Thank you. And I will be speaking today because my fellow speakers have actually made things so easier for me. I don't have to have a slide. But I just want to have a conversation about the promise of data and the abundance that comes with data. The topic of my conversation is abundance in the data of nations. And I took that topic by looking back to Adam Smith's classic, The Wealth of Nations. You know, in 1776, a very brilliant economist in Europe wrote something that have actually changed the nature of competitiveness of nations. And I said, the wealth of nations, today, abundance in the data of nations. I'll take you back to your secondary school days. I had a very good one. And I remember the very first time I went for my SS1, that is the senior part of the secondary school education. I studied in a very village school in Abia State. My physics teacher came into the class and explained to us that before the end of the 18th century, that the material component of the universe was studied under one aspect of culture called natural philosophy. In other words, everything on earth was studied under 2 broad things: physical science or biological science. The physical science, basically chemistry and physics, the study of matter and relationship to energy, and the study of substances that are properties. And then the biological science is biology, the study of life, divided into botany and zoology, the study of life and then the study of animals. Very exciting. He explained that, and that was what it was: human natural philosophy. Then I went to Futo, the very best university in this country. I know you're going to agree. A professor came into class and said, students, welcome to FUTO. This is where we train some of the finest engineers in this nation. I'll be taking you on a course, philosophy and logic. And he asked us a question that day, what is the material component of the universe? What is this world made up of? You can imagine students, the southeastern part of Nigeria, some say the Holy Spirit. Because the Holy Spirit is everywhere, people. But he explained to us what Thales said, that the world is made up of water. He explained to us what Heraclitus said, that the world is made up of fire. But I like what he said about Pythagoras. Pythagoras is the guy that gave us the Pythagoras theorem that in a right angle triangle, that if you take the individual squares or the opposite and the adjacent, you put them together, sum them together, you get a square hypotenuse. Pythagoras said that the world is made up of numbers. And because if the world is made up of numbers, it means that the business of humanity is nothing but numbers. Everything we do on earth, whether you are running an advertisement, whether you are doing a Facebook click, whether you are trying to search Google, everything comes down. If you can make sense of that, you understand your world. Because the essence of farm is to solve frictions in markets. I give an example. Why do we have companies? We have companies because there are frictions that exist in the marketplace. And when you see those frictions, you say, I have an idea. I want to go into that particular market and fix and melt and solve that friction. And when I solve that problem, markets will reward me. That is the revenue you generate. Because you are trying to solve a problem that exists between demand and supply. And because you have figured out and have the capability to solve that problem, markets pay you because you are trying to eliminate that friction. If you do it very, very excellently, you win markets and territories. How do you do that? It comes down to what Pythagoras said, that the world is made up of numbers. And if you understand numbers, you have an edge in order to have a better means of solving that. I have $100. I don't need $100 for the next 1 year. And somebody else needs $100 because he wants to go into a business of buying orange. He's ready to pay me a little money to borrow that $100 from me. Unfortunately, I cannot easily find him, and he cannot easily find me. So what happens? A bank exists, asking me to come and put down $100 in the bank, so that when that money comes to the bank, they can now lend that $100 to that man for a small fee. The bank has solved a friction which has existed between me and that person I don't know, and the bank deserves to be paid. That is the mission for that bank. And that is how it has solved that problem. But if you go through everything that happened, one of the most elemental constructs is that they were nothing but using numbers, manipulating numbers. And if you go back through human history, conquests, battles, empires have been built on numbers. From the time of Abacus to the time of slide rule to the time that Charles Babbage in 17th century created the difference engine, man has been looking for how to make sense of numbers. And from the time then we went through the time of ENIAC to 1937, when Shockley invented the transistor. I'm an electrical engineer. A transistor is what they call an active device. It gives you the capacity to actually amplify signals, unlike passive elements like capacitors and inductors and resistors. And then as we were celebrating the invention of the transistor, we went through the time of von Neumann, who invented the store-program concept, giving us the capacity that we can actually have storage mechanisms inside a computational system. And as that world was then, Jarl Kibbe of Texas Instruments and Robert Noyce invented the microprocessor in 1957, giving us a new domain in our ability to actually process this number scale that we had never imagined was possible. And as he was doing that, Bill Gates, through Microsoft, said, this cannot just be only for companies. I want to make ability of using this computational machine available to every person. Then we have what we call the personal computing industry, making it possible that individuals can own computers, making it possible that people can use computers at home. And today we have what is changing the world from Facebook to Google to Twitter to Netherlands, all kinds of entities and companies. We are now seeing an evolutionary process where data is everywhere because these companies are generating tons of data, changing in volume, velocity, and veracity. You know, as Ernest Hemingway would say, water everywhere, but not a single drop to drink. And if you go back to the Hamlet in William Shakespeare, Lord Polonius asks this question, my lord, what are you reading? Hamlet said, words, words, words. Today is data, data, data. And here you are talking about data. I am telling you, it is not just about the data. It's about the capacity to refine the data that matters. Nigeria is an oil-producing country because we have ConocoPhillips, we have Shell, we have ExxonMobil. If you ask all of them to leave Nigeria, Nigeria will cease to become a member of OPEC because we will just have our oil, but we don't have the technology capacity to actually make sense and use that oil. So it's not just about the data that matters, but it's actually the capacity to refine that oil. And he'll tell you something by going back to history. More than 500 years ago today, it was one of the best articles I have in Harvard Business. He said that the world GDP, they call it the gross world product. If you compare the GDPs of nation, have a gross world product. The gross world product, if you look at that map, it was flat. In other words, generations of people that lived apart did not experience any major change in their living standards. Of course, there were empires and kingdoms. There were obidoms, obadoms, and emidoms. But man was poor because over generations, GDPs did not move. And because GDPs did not move in when population was increasing, per capita income of citizens did not accelerate. And when that did not happen, man was in a state of stasis. Poverty everywhere. Men were dying at 37, 27, and the world was so much doomed. But that was not that the man was not smart. Some of the most fundamental mathematical constructs and physics and chemistry, those men created them. But many of them, when they died, they were so poor that their families could not even afford a graveyard. So the world was an inventive society. The world was not an innovation society. An inventive society is a society where there are so many ideas. An innovation society is a society where there are products and services. Nigeria is an inventive society in many ways. We have so many ideas to fix electricity, to provide water, clean water. We go road roads, but you can't find those things because we are all inventors. We are not innovators. And that is the challenge in this data. How can we move from becoming inventors into innovators? Really what matters. And I'll take you back because it's so important to understand that if we do not have that trajectory, if we do not have that change, we are going to be just onlookers in this revolution of data. The needs, the expectation, the perceptions of customers. Companies serve, companies lead. Because to move from that inventive society into an innovation society, it means that products have to come into the marketplace. Innovation is equals to invention plus commercialization. I'm an engineer, so I write the equation. And that commercialization means there is a friction in the market that you want to solve. And to solve that friction, you need to understand the needs of the market. People go for needs of customers. And I always tell you that solving the needs of your customer is not actually a very good strategy. Because the needs of customers are things customers already know they need. You need to go beyond the needs of the customers to the expectations of the customer. If I'm an environmental activist and I live in a house and you are giving me electricity through coal, you've met my needs because I have light. But if another company comes and provides me that electricity from renewable energy source, the person has met my needs but has also met my expectation. I'm going to go for that company that met my expectation. But the biggest of all is the perception of your customer. The perception of your customer is when you have a product in the market that people never imagined was possible, but the day they see that product, they begin to say, wow, I need this. Diamond Integrated Banking System had one of the finest products in the history of this country in banking. Unfortunately, Diamond Bank is going through paralysis. I was still in secondary school in 1990s when they created the DIBS. DIBS. You put money in one branch of the bank. You can withdraw it in any branch of the bank. In other words, if you are in Lagos and you have a bank account in Diamond Bank, if you go to Kano, you can operate that account in Kano. Before DIBS, if you had an account in First Bank and you travel from Lagos to Kano and you run out of cash in Kano, you know what you do? You have to come back from Kano back to Lagos. And we all accepted it because it was not possible for you to access that money in Kano. And remember a man called Lomaju Goje, who was a comedian. Anytime he was going to the bank, he would carry his mat because he knew he was going to spend 6 hours in the bank. But the bank came and said, I don't want to solve your needs. I don't want to solve your expectation. I'm going to give you a perception. And then he stimulated demand, giving people into a new dimension. That you can run a bank account in Nigeria that is agnostic of the location of the branch where you actually opened that. He changed this industry. And there is another company called Apple. They created a product called iPhone. iPhone is what I call a perception product. iPhone is a perception product because even people that were involved, many people did not understand what Steve Jobs was trying to do. I was told that when Verizon saw the prototype of iPhone, they didn't make sense of what iPhone was coming to become. Because you don't do focus groups. You don't even need to do a survey. You have to operate at a realm to understand, to stimulate demand at a higher level into the dimension. It's going to be a great moment because all these things are going to be exponentially scaled with data and artificial intelligence. And that is where it becomes so exciting. We know we need to move from that inventive society to innovation society. How do we now move into that domain of execution? How can we now participate in this data analytics? That's where it becomes exciting. We have to have accumulated capabilities. We have to have accumulated capabilities. Accumulation of capabilities is very critical because if you do not have the capabilities, there is absolutely nothing you can do. And great companies of earth build capabilities across different niches of commerce. And when you build that, you have to now move from the downstream participation into the upstream participation. When I mean downstream is simply the way we talk about it in the oil industry today, where many local companies participate in the distribution and marketing of crude oil, while the multinational companies are only focused in the upstream where a lot of value can actually be created. Because at the upstream is where challenges are huge and opportunities are also humongous. We have to leverage and have to move into that domain because that's where we can actually change the trajectory upon our nation. You know, when you move in the upstream, you tax nations, cities, and citizens. I always tell people that all of us pay tax to Dangote because it's called conglomerate tax. Every conglomerate has a tax. Anywhere they operate, you pay them. And if you refuse to pay that tax, you're in trouble because you have no choice. Just look at what is happening with Amazon and New York City. Amazon said, okay, I've chosen you for the headquarters too. And New York politicians, they were very good in talking and tweeting, and they annoyed the company. The company left. Now they are now begging the company to come back because that's what conglomerates do. Conglomerates will say, I have asked you to give me tax breaks. And if you don't pay the tax breaks, I won't come and help you. We give Dangote very good favorable forests. And some people, like my Igbo brothers, will say, why don't I get the same forest at Dangote to import all my used cars and all my expired this thing from China? So how do you expect the federal government of Nigeria to give you favorable exchange for a problem that is downstream, that anyone can solve. Dangote solve upstream problems, and only Dangote can only solve them. And government has to pay tax to Dangote to make him happy to solve them. And that is the way it's in technology. They say that maybe IBM may not have paid taxes in some years, and GE did not pay many years, because they were solving problems that startups and small companies can solve. And that is what this artificial intelligence thing is going to do. It is going to cause a massive dislocation in the world. You know, I was in United Nations last 3 weeks, and the conversation was the development and industrialization strategy we have in Africa, mirroring China, may actually not work out. Because the West may not send those cheap labor work to Africa, because we feel that Chinese are getting richer, the labor cost is going high, and the comparative advantage of labor cost we have in Africa means that when they are tired of China, because China is very expensive, they come to Africa. But AIs and robots can do those jobs. And if AIs and robots can do those jobs in America and Europe, those jobs will not come. So it is something that there is going to be a dislocation. And it could be very massive. Of course, we still have decades ahead of us, because we do not have that parity to have that inflation point, unlike Europe and America or Northern America, where any incremental improvement in artificial intelligence and robots can actually cause massive dislocation in the labor force. Africa, I mean, you need to have electricity before robots can work, right? And hey, people, I always tell people this story. I was in Russia, in Moscow, and I met a group of hackers. They told me we could not hack Nigerian banks because it was timing out. You know, that was in 2012. So when they start, they get in before you know the thing will time out. And that was a frustration. And I met a bank CEO client. I said, man, you have the best defensive strategy. Don't make your network fast. Because if you do, and I'm telling you, if you look at the correlation from what even the National Assembly, as the networks are getting faster, Nigerian companies are actually losing more money. Because we have never had this mindset of security. So banks are losing money, companies are losing money as these networks are getting faster. So the point is this, that a nation with data, without capacity to refine the data, cannot be talking about a future of data. And I give you a case study in one of my companies, Inventors. Thank you very much. We're here. Inventors makes precision agriculture technology tools. If you put out sensors in the soil, they collect information like temperature, moisture, humidity, and electroconductivity of that soil, and then send it through a gateway like satellite or GSM or Wi-Fi into a cloud server where we have some AI systems to make sense of what the farmers are doing. And as the crops grow, we have these hyperspectral cameras that image the vegetation of the farm, put them into an algorithm to have a 360-degree understanding of what the crops do. One is we have to take out this whole construct in Africa that a farmer is also hungry. It's only in Africa you see someone who is a farmer, and he also needs government to come and give him food. But if you look critically, the guy just bought a little fowl to sacrifice to dead men they call ancestors to give him a bumper harvest. And let's say these ancestors are always very, very smart people. Most of them died very poor. And now immediately they died, they became wise. So you go and take loan from somebody, give it to one very always man. They go under one tree, they kill the chicken, and they eat it with the yam, and they make sure everything is finished because the law said you can't take any home, so that their wives do not participate. And when they are finished eating, they say, go and farm. You're going to have a bumper harvest. You know the result for generation? Mass poverty in the community of farmers. But what we say, we need to change that trajectory. And we created Inventors. So now with Inventors, we bring insights, data, We are one of the first companies on the earth that now combine the vegetation of the farm and what is happening below the surface of the earth to give you a 360-degree understanding of the state of that farm. The goal is this. People that take fertilizer from government and they go and resell the fertilizer, Zenvos will see a differential on the nutritional content of the soil after the application of the fertilizer. And if there is none, we say, man, this man did not apply any fertilizer. You know, there are places I don't drink water when I go to Nigeria. It is bad because this boy is coming here to spoil our business. Because we'll tell you, there is no way this man would have applied NPK 1515 because there was no change in potassium, phosphorus, or nitrogen. So and you don't need to have agents. Everything is delivered through the cloud. So with Zenvos, we tell you in the next 3 days, please don't apply fertilizer because we are expecting a heavy rainfall. And because it's going to rain, if I apply the fertilizer, it will wash it out. We also tell you in the next 1 week, we're looking at the weather. You need to irrigate this farm in the next 72 hours. But please hold on. In the next 32 hours, we're expecting rainfall to come. These are little things, and we are seeing farmers double, triple farm yields. And of course, we have the Mexera technology, which is the one I wrote extensively in a recent article in Harvard. I believe in the next 4 or 5 years, if you are coming out of a church or coming out of a mosque or in the marketplace, you could just take a little blink of your blood and you tell, hey man, it's like you have malaria. But I have ordered, what do they treat for malaria? Please, at your own risk, consider or whatever. I've ordered one to the nearest pharmacy near where you live, when you just go pick it up. And so we are building electronic medical record system that is now tied to artificial intelligence that before you treat any human being, with the doctors who are working in Africa, you must have his medical record. We believe it's absolutely unethical for any human being to treat a patient without access to his medical record. And what Mexera has done is to figure out how to make it possible that doctors will actually have that medical record. These are just 2 cases of artificial intelligence. These are just 2 cases. When they talk about these things, they are not esoteric. These are common sense things, like Pythagoras said many years ago. Numbers. And it's all about execution. And it's now about moving that execution into the future of abundance. I have a lot of belief in this country, and I'm so excited because I'm always here. Sometimes in a month, I come here 2-3 times because I have so much confidence that greater things are coming. And I want you to believe. But we cannot just afford to play at the downstream. We need to do the hard stuff. Leverage. Move from the lagoons of Lagos to the mangrove of Calabar. From the beautiful plains of Sokoto to the grassland of Yobe. To that rainforest in Owerri. We have a promise in this beautiful country. Let's make it happen. Thank you very much.
All right. That was a very good one. Very good one. So we're going to go for our lunch very quickly. And we want us to be very disciplined to come back so that we can go into other sessions of this conference and eventually have the practical session during the panel discussions. So I want to call on the event organizers to take it from this point and direct us on our lunch. Thank you for your patience so far.